There we go. There we go. Oof. Hey, Chidri. Oh, man. Oh my god, you're hitting me with the stuff right off the bat. Just give me a moment. Oh, you're too cute. Okay, let's see. Let's see what happens here. Okay, let me just one moment arrange my windows here because like okay, there we go. All good. Let's go, Battler. Let's see. What are you gonna add to this lovely, lovely conversation? Pinkness chin. Yeah, today I am pink. Oh, sorry, I pressed the wrong button.
ダメだな。全然ダメだぜ。
全然ダメだぜ。
エヴァおばさん。
You like pink, Bear? Oh.
ダメって何がだよ、バトラー。
Jessica looked up at me, hanging on to my every word. Auntie Eva's expression was composed, as always.
全然ダメって何が？バトラー君。
Who doesn't? Yeah. When I was little, I loved pink and purple the most. It was like everything that was pink and purple had my attention. I was terrorizing my mom, whose favorite color is red, so she wanted to see me in red a lot, but I wanted pink and purple. Hey Zekto, how's it going? Now I love all colors, but blue and purple still are now my... Like purple still, and then together with blue at the top of the list. Aww. We're getting everyone's opinion on pink. Cute. Very cute.
聞かせてよ。
Let's see. What has...
一方からしか見られないから、夏日おばさんしかありえないって思い込んじまうのさ。別に、夏日おばさんを擁護するわけじゃねえが、そんなハッタリのチェックメイトじゃ、通用しねえってことさ。
Purple, pink, and then the rest. Nice. Zekt also likes purple. Okay, we can at least, you know, have the commonality of really liking purple. And my nails are still purple, so I kind of like... I'm doing pink purple today. I am living my childhood dream, I guess. My makeup is half pink and half purple too, so there we go. You can't really see that well in this tiny window, so you have to wait until the end of the stream for a big Nezumi moment to see it. But yeah.
レシートを軸にした推理はまずまずだとは思う。筋は悪くない。だが、俺の採点じゃせいぜい65点ってとこだ。これが答案なら、居残りで補修ってとこだぜ。
あら、じゃあレシートで封印されている扉をどうやって破ってお父様を失踪させられるというの？私の説以外に！
Oh my god. Oh.
エヴァおばさんの説は確かに面白い。
Nezner Red is the best. Ah. when I was little, like I kind of like I was a bit disgruntled about it because everything was just like, oh, red, red, red everywhere. Okay, but what about my favorite colors? You know, because there was a bit of an imbalance there. But as I grew up, I like all of the colors, and I have them all in my wardrobe. Maybe I have a little bit more of blue because I really love blue, but I have all kinds of colors. So yeah. But it's good to know. Then I will have red a lot more in my wardrobe for stream too.
そして、その説以外に、じいさまが失踪できる方法がないって言い切れるなら、最終目撃者である夏日おばさんが黒であると、確かに言い切れるだろう。だが、夏日おばさんが無実で、濡れ衣である可能性が残っている以上、そうだと断言することはできねえ。
ならバトラ君は夏日姉さん以外の誰にお父様を失踪させられたというの？姉さんしかありえないのよ。私のレシートがそれを証明してしまったわ。一度目に書斎に訪れた夏日姉さん。そして二度目に私と訪れるまでの間、書斎は完全に密室で密室開封後には失踪している。これで夏日姉さんが犯人じゃないというなら、どんなトリックがあるっていうの？
だから65点なんだよ、エヴァおばさん。じゃあ、ここで、チェス盤をひっくり返すぜ。どうやって、外部からじいさまを失踪さ
I
せる
have
か
this
じゃな
feeling
い。
that we're gonna keep flipping over the chessboard the whole novel through. Just flip, 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 flip.
どうやって、内部からじいさまが失踪するかって考えるんだ。扉にはレシートが挟まれていたから、使用されていない。窓も、出ることはできても、外側からは施錠できず。しかもエヴァおばさんは書斎を訪れた時に窓の施錠を確認している。
I think I missed this detail. I didn't remember that the windows were locked. Okay.
だから窓も使用されていない。その時点では確かに書斎は密室だった。これは認めるしかない。だがしかし、書斎は永遠に密室だったわけじゃない。レシートの封印さえ解かれれば、扉は使用可能になり脱出可能になる。つまり、夏日おばさんがどうやってじいさまを失踪させたかじゃない。どうやって、じいさまは書斎を脱出したのかって考えるんだよ。じいさまの書斎は、ただの書斎じゃねえんだよな。源氏さんの話じゃ、トイレからキッチン、ベッドルームまである、ちょいとした家並みじゃねえか。例えば、ベッドの下にでも潜って隠れたら、おばさんたちは部屋からいなくなったと思い込めるぜ。エヴァおばさんもそこまで調べてきたわけじゃねえだろ。そして、おばさんたちは失踪したと思い、開花へ戻る。この時レシートはもうない。つまり、じいさまは密室である間は部屋に隠れ続け、エヴァおばさんたちをやり過ごした後に部屋から脱出することで、この密室を破ることができる。
何よそれ。どうしてお父様がそんな妙なことをして部屋を抜け出さなきゃならないの？
Why would your dad want to do something weird? Are you serious? Are you asking that question in seriousness?
口頭無形にも程があるわよ。
ああ、口頭無形かもな。だが、それでも、夏日おばさんが濡れ衣かもしれない可能性は示してる。エヴァおばさんのレシートは完璧じゃねえ。チェスで言えば、チェックくらいにはなったろ。だが、チェックメイトじゃねえ。そして、俺が最高に気に入らねえのは、それを夏日おばさんに釈明しろと迫って、それができなきゃ黒だって断定しようとしたエヴァおばさんのその論法さ。
Thank you. That is the thing that I very much dislike myself.
それがまかり通るってんなら、この後ろ宮バトラー、ここでもう一回チェス盤をひっくり返させてもらおうじゃねえか。
He's gonna flip it again.
エヴァおばさん、あんたの論法によるならよ、あんたと秀吉おじさんが昨日親父たち6人を殺害してからのこのことゲストハウスに帰ったんじゃないってことをこの場で釈明してもらわなくちゃならねえぜ。夏日おばさんに釈明を強いたんだ。あんたにはもちろん自身の潔白を釈明できるんだろうな。じいさまの遺産が全部転がり込むエヴァおばさんよ。
そうだぜ。エヴァおばさんだって十分怪しいじゃねえかよ。母さんがじいさまの最終目撃者だから怪しいって言うなら、エヴァおばさんだって父さんたちの最終目撃者じゃないか。バトラの言う通りだぜ。自分たちは殺してないってことを証明してみせろよ。
僕もお母さんの推理は少し勇み足だと思うな。レシートの件は確かに重要なヒントだと思う。でもそれはバトラ君の言う通り、夏日おばさんが何がしかの犯人であることを断定できるものじゃない。僕たちは等しく全員が容疑者なんだ。夏日おばさんだけが責められる道理はない。
誇り高きお父様が床に這いつくばってベッドの下に？
Now he's your noble father? Okay. I didn't get from the previous streams that she considered her father like noble or whatever. On the contrary, I felt like they all were kind of I don't know, just thinking of him as a crazy person and believing themselves to be above him in certain ways, particularly because of his like weird quirks, let's say, and interests and actions and whatever. Now he's our noble father who could never have hidden under the bed, which doesn't necessarily have to be the bed. It just needs, for this theory to have, you know, any sort of meat to it, it would be enough for there to be some space in that room where in that, you know, mini apartment of his, because it has kitchen, bathroom, and all of that. So there just needs to be a space where he could have been, and they didn't check, which I don't know that they checked it that religiously, or that they know all of the little nooks and crannies and little secrets of it. So
そんな誰事で説明がつくと思って？それならエヴァおばさんが先に説明しろよ。特によ、誰がどうやって殺して、そして自分が関わっていないという証拠を示してみろってんだ。
Oh, okay, Jessica, take it easy. What's happening?
お嬢様、お嬢様。
Jessica suddenly started coughing. At first I thought that she was just choking after yelling too loud, but it seemed to be lasting too long for that, and she really looked like she was suffering. Jessica kept coughing and choking down on her hands and knees.
ジェシカ、しっかり。なんじゃ先生。
ジェシカさん、吸入器を早く。
Ah, it's because she has asthma.
私が持ってきているのがあります。
Dr. Nunja pulled bronchodilator inhaler. I hope I read that right. I'm not familiar with these. From his own bag, which was lying on the sofa, and handed it to Kanun-kun. Come to think of it, 6 years ago, didn't Jessica sometimes break into violent coughing and have to use that? But 6 years ago, I never saw Jessica look like she was in this much pain.
兄貴、ジェシカってこんなに喘息ひどかったっけ？
ここ数年でだいぶ悪くなったんだよ。大丈夫な時はいいんだけどね。突然発作が来ると咳が止まらなくなるんだよ。
お嬢様、お薬です。さあ。
Taking the inhaler from Kanon-kun, Jessica used it with a practiced hand. For a while, it looked like her throat was still feeling itchy, but it gradually settled down.
大丈夫かよ、ジェシカ。びっくりしたぜ。
大したことねえよ。心配すんじゃねえぜ。
Beads of sweat covered Jessica's whole body and she couldn't hide her rough breathing, but it looked like her sudden attack had calmed down for now. Voice acting an asthma attack is my second worst nightmare. Yeah, props to the voice actress. And also, if I've heard this right, although I don't know if there's any difference between how Americans do it or Japanese do it, but generally when there's like these kind of like strained kind of sounds that they need to record, they leave those for the end of the session. And if there's more of them to do, they don't do it all at once and they split it over various sessions or something. So yeah, props to the voice actress, and I'm really sure that she was taken care of to not destroy her voice, because yeah, that was quite a bunch of coughing that she recorded there. This disturbance had left the room's hostile atmosphere in an awkward, unsettled state. But that was fine. There was absolutely no need to be driving up everyone's suspicions of each other. When you think about it, even probing at each other's alibis and searching for the killer were probably completely unnecessary. After all, we're just powerless, ordinary people, and when the police come tomorrow, they'll definitely employ cutting-edge techniques and investigate the case thoroughly. Solve all of the riddles and arrest the killer. Maybe in Japan, you know, they're like that. I don't know if this accurately describes the police everywhere in the world, but that still
確
feels
かに
a
バ
bit
トラ君の
naive.
言う通りかしら。夏日姉さんが疑わしいように、私たちも疑わしさを拭えていない。それを今議論し合うのは確かに不毛ね。明日、警察に全てを任せれば済むだけの話よ。でも、バトラ君だって知りたいんじゃないの？犯人を。大切な人を失った痛みを思い知らせてやるために、1秒でも早く知りたいんじゃない？
それは否定しないです。これだけの上等を決めてくれやがった野郎を。でも、だからといって、18人の中の誰かを疑いたくはない。さっきはああ言ったが、俺は、エヴァおばさんだって疑いたくない。俺にとってのエヴァおばさんは、茶目っ気があって、いつも楽しくさせてくれる最高のおばさんだ。そんなおばさんと、こんな罵り合いはしたくねえ。
Aww, Battler.
ここにいる誰だって、そんなことは望んでねえはずさ。だろ、みんな。
バトラ君に同じ、意味のない罵り合いだね。多分、これだけの人数が朝から一ところにずっと集まってるから、
Someone
みん
pegged
な
down
スト
to
レス
the
が溜まってるんだよ。
chessboard. That's a good one.
でしょうな。無理もないことです。言ってできるものではありませんが、なるべく皆さんリラックスしましょう。
Yeah, she definitely is like that. I agree.
エヴァ、わしらも頭を冷やすべきとちゃうか。レシートの件は確かにお父さんの失踪を探る上で重要な手がかりになると思うで。警察が来たら話すといいやろ。
そうね。
Eva would be on Twitter all the time. Oh god. No.
そう。レシートの一件で、つい鬼の首を取ったような気持ちになっちゃったのね。確かに夏日姉さんだけを疑うのはフェアじゃないわ。私たちだって等しく疑わしい。でもね、バトラ君。
She is way too docile right now. I'm getting the creeps.
レシートの話だけは本当よ。
I mean, it's all based on your word. So it's as real as your word is.
これ、忘れないでね。そしてこれがどういう意味を持つか、もう一度よく考えてみてね。
Auntie Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi stood up. It looked like they planned on leaving the parlor.
結局私たちはこんな推理ごっこしても意味はないのよ。だってどうせ警察が全て明かしてくれるんですもの。
That's right. Even if we don't play this detective game, when the typhoon passes and those lively seagulls return to the harbor, everything will settle itself. Yes. If you think about it, this kind of crime is completely trivial. It will definitely be resolved, even if we do nothing, when the seagulls cry. I can't. I can't. On the one hand, because of the, you know, dropping the title into Battler's inner monologue. And second, this is so naive. Like, is anyone expecting at this point that the typhoon will actually pass the next day? We have so many more things to go through. The typhoon is not gonna pass the next day. Too bad Jessica ate them. Yes, she fried them. And ate them. Yeah.
これ以上、夏日姉さんも私の顔を見ていたくはないでしょ。私も同じよ。確か姉さんは昨日、ゲストハウスに帰らなくて済むようにって客室を用意してくれたのよね。
Yeah, what about that? Why didn't you use those rooms? Why did you go to the guest house? We don't know.
あそこはバスもトイレもあるし、鍵もチェーンもかかる。 横になれるベッドもあるし、主人もマリアちゃんとチャンネル争いをせずにテレビを見ることができるわ。
お好きになさるといいでしょう。でもくれぐれも用心を。
ありがとう姉さん。そして余計なお世話よ。姉さんはみんなの監視をよろしくね。犯人はこの中に必ずいるんだから。そして姉さんも自分が監視をされていることをお忘れなく。
捨て台詞はそれで十分ですか？
十分よ。じゃあね、夏日姉さん。源氏さん、夕食になったら呼んでね。それまでチェーンをかけて閉じこもってるわ。
源氏、カノン、お二人を客室までお送りを。
結構よ。送り狼なんて嫌だもの。むしろ私たちが部屋に行くまで誰もこの部屋を出ないでくれる方が安心よ。ジョージ行くわよ。
僕はここでみんなといるよ。
ジョージ、この部屋に犯人がいるのよ。そんなところにいるつもり？
この部屋を出るということは親族の誰かを疑うのと同じことだよ。僕はあんな恐ろしいことができる人間が親族にいるなんて信じない。
ジョージ、あなたからも言ってやってよ。
ジョージももう一人前の男や。そのジョージの仁義がこの部屋から出えへん言わせるなら、それも勝手やろ。好きにさせたれ。
父さん。
Auntie Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi left. The only voice that called after them was the sound of the rain. The parlor was being buried beneath the savage atmosphere. When I looked at the clock, I was surprised to find that it was already evening. Had we really spent that much time worrying, talking, fighting about such needless things? Feeling bored, I started clawing at my head when Maria and I made eye contact. Since I had thought she was completely immersed in the TV, I was a little surprised.
今なら信じるぜ。手紙も殺人もすべてベアトリーチェの仕業だ。いや、むしろ頼むからそうだと名乗り出てほしいぜ。19人目の仕業ってことにさせてくれ。じゃなきゃ俺たち18人はいつまでも互いを疑い合わなくちゃならねえ。これなら19人目の存在を信じる方がマシさ。扉も窓も開けずにじいさまを外へ連れ出すなんて。ベアトリーチェならお茶の子さいさいなんだろう。
Maria, after taking a single short breath, hung her head and then raised her face again. Oh no, it's gonna be creepy again. I'm bracing for it. Yeah, there it is.
そうだよ。魔女の前に扉の鍵なんて何の役にも立たないんだよ。ベアトリーチェは72柱のすべてに精通する。
Oh, she is.
33位のガープは望む相手を望む場所へ瞬時に運ぶ力を与えるし、彼女にとってどのような密室に閉じこもった人間だろうと連れ出すことは難しいことでもな。
魔女はすげえな。頼むから、もしまだ事件を起こす気なら絶対に人間には無理なことをして俺に19人目を、いや魔女の存在を信じさせてくれよ。
These lines from Battler, you can feel his pain. Like I can instantly feel it in my heart. It's like, ugh, thorns. Oh.
いいよ。あったら伝えておくよ。
Or at the very least, that is how the voice actor interpreted it. That doesn't mean anything about the writing. Okay. Because Bea is telling me to also doubt Battler and to doubt everyone, so it doesn't definitively prove anything. It's just what I felt in the moment. Sure, Maria, you tell her. Damn it. I don't even understand my own thoughts anymore. When I'm led to believe in a 19th person, I deny it. And when I'm led to believe that there are only 18 people, I deny that too. Even though I wish that there were more than just the 18 people here, I can't accept the existence of that 19th person. In short, even though there are more than 18 people, there are less than 19. Like, we all know, math hurts. Yes, I've been through high school. It was tough. The number of people in this mansion is 19 greater than X greater than 18. Battler best husband, though. So the number of people can't be represented by an integer. However, it's impossible for there to be anything after the decimal point. You shouldn't be able to represent the number of people with anything but an integer. And yet 19 is strictly greater than X. Strictly greater than 18. I should have read it that way. Why does a fraction less than 1 play into this? It's no wonder. That 19th person is an invisible being that can't be seen. That's why in the integer representation that must be used to describe numbers of people, she can't be seen. That witch cannot be seen, because Beatrice has no body. Therefore she is invisible. Is there a 19th person or not? Does the witch exist or not? 19 strictly greater than X, strictly greater than 18. The witch exists somewhere in that X. The two who are close. Ooh, okay. The uncomfortable atmosphere continued even after those two left. It was thick with the idea that thinking about who the killer was would be the same as deciding who to doubt. It had begun to feel like discussion of the incidents was itself taboo. So no one was mentioning it, at least out loud. However, those thoughts were what filled our minds. All that we couldn't say aloud made our heads feel like they were going to explode. So at least on the outside, the parlor had once again regained its calm mood, though everything was left unsettled.
少しだけ雨足が弱まった気がするね。
まだいっぱい降ってるよ。おー。
仮にやんだって、この島には船がねえんだしな。船が明日すぐに来てくれりゃいいんだがよ。
You're still latching onto the hope.
洋館バカンさんもうお腹いっぱいだぜ。
母さん、明日船はいつ来るのかな。
本来なら帰りの船は今日の3時に来てくれることになっていました。先方も台風が過ぎてから出直すと電話をしてくれたでしょうが、あいにく電話は普通ですから。でも向こうも子供の使いではありません。客人の方々の送迎目的だと教えてありますから、おそらく明日の朝一番で、多分9時頃に来てくれるでしょう。
It was completely black outside. When I looked at the clock, I realized that it was just past 7. I was starting to get hungry. In the kitchen, Kumasawa was cooking enthusiastically. She had laid out a variety of dishes, and while they didn't match the level of Goda's artful cooking, they were still quite gorgeous. It was an act of kindness from Kumasawa trying to use food to enliven everyone's low spirits. Oh, I would love to eat her cooking. It sounds nice. And it sounds like it's the kind of cooking that's made with love, right? Kumasawa wasn't nearly as talented as a professional cook like Goda, but she was far from unskilled. I don't need a professional cook. On the contrary, since she had been brought up in a fishing village, the simple food she created was sometimes very highly valued. Yeah, that's exactly it. Kanon arranged the food Kumasawa had finished creating on plates under her direction. Kanon also helped in the kitchen sometimes, but since he was rarely placed in that role, he was slightly awkward even though he tried his best. Self-conscious about the fact that he couldn't skillfully arrange the food, Kanon's expression darkened slightly. But Kumasawa smiled to say everything was fine. Food talks again, I know. At least they're not going into specifics just yet. It's just generally, food that looks very good, so I'm okay. But I might not be later on when they start actually describing it if they do it.
綺麗に盛り付けられてますよ。カノン君もお上手ですよ。
シャノン姉さんだったらもっと綺麗に。
Kanon stopped arranging the food for a bit and hung his head. Shannon was the one who always assisted Kumasawa in her cooking. Tonight, Kanon was doing it instead. As he remembered Shannon's face and her brutal end, he grimaced.
今は忘れなさい。
Genji spoke kindly to Kanon as he advanced upon. Oh, now it's Genji and the doctor who are playing chess. Nanjo had escaped from the parlor once the mood had become sour, and Genji had become his opponent in a game of chess upon Nanjo's request.
はい。今は忘れます。
それがいいだろう。
Genji purposefully faced away from Kanon as he spoke. He did so because he understood that it might make things tougher on Kanon if he noticed that someone was looking at his eyes. Nanjo also understood that and held back any thoughtless words.
金蔵さんもどこへ行かれたんでしょうな。ご無事だといいのですが。わかりません。ただ、すべては親方様が望まれ、仕組まれたことのように思っています。それを邪推することは、親方様にお仕えする家具には過ぎたことです。源氏さんは怖くないのですか？私には今夜まだ何か良くないことが起こるような気がして。
I'm gonna be incredibly surprised if it's a peaceful night.
怖いことなど何も。私はただ後ろ宮家にお仕えするだけですので。
Nanjo sighed through his nose and made a carefully considered move. Nanjo was very slightly dubious. Could Genji possibly think that he would be left out of this? He couldn't begin to imagine what was happening inside this mansion, but he definitely couldn't deny the possibility that it was something of Kinzo's design. For sure it was. If you liken this island to chess, Kinzo had opened the game, and as a result, 6 pieces had fallen. Could it be that Genji was calm because he believed that he alone was outside the chessboard and safe? So far, to me, it just sounds like he's like, okay, this is where I am, and what's gonna happen is gonna happen, whatever it is. And he just basically is accepting that. And not letting it, not letting fear cripple him. At least that's what it sounds to me. What do I know? Nanjo thought about it. Wasn't everyone just a piece on this chessboard lined up equally without any exceptions? Wasn't even Genji who had gained more of Kinzo's trust than anyone? No, wasn't Nanjo himself, although proud of his position as Kinzo's only close friend.
Embrace your inner geek.
Oh hey, Lunar Festival, thank you for the follow. Resignation is the word. Yeah, you're right. You are right, that works. But how do I put it? Resignation has some sort of defeatist nuance to it. I don't feel that Genji is necessarily defeated. He is serene in front of what may happen. He just has accepted it. No way. If there's an even better word for that. But yeah, resignation is a good one too. Just another one of the pieces laid out on the chessboard. Are you though?
私は今夜が本当に怖いのです。無事に明日の朝を迎えられることを心より願っています。
Yeah, nice to have you around. Welcome. The guest room that Eva and Hideyoshi had moved into was used to house guests before the guest house had been constructed. So until a few years ago, they had stayed in this room every family conference and were very familiar with it. If you knew the room, you stayed there in the past, and you knew it was ready for you, why, in God's will, did you go to the guest house the night before, through the freaking thunderstorm? just making me question it more and more and more. I know I'm like a broken record with that question, but it's just... Okay. I want to know. This room, just like a room at a hotel, had a bedroom and a bathroom. So even though they were still shut in, it was far more comfortable than the parlor.
やっぱり家族だけだとリラックスできるな。他のみんなも客室にこもって鍵をかけてりゃええんや。
夏日姉さんが客間を出るなって威張り散らしてるんだもん。誰も口答えなんてできないでしょ。あの人、ずーっと冷や飯を食ってきたから、兄さんが死んでやっと天下が来たって張り切ってんのよ。
I think that that's a completely wrong read on what Natsuhi is doing, but okay. It's Eva's read. It's...
まったく、ずうずうしいったら嵐の。
Okay, Eva.
まあそう言うな。夏日さんもあれで結構頑張っとるんやで。お前もそう突っかからんでもええやないか。さっきのレシートの件もあそこまでは言い過ぎやで。
I know, Bear. Everyone is sus. Everyone.
だってん。
Oh my god, her face!
あそこで言わなかったら、もう言うタイミングがないんだもん。
Eva, sulking cutely, sat down beside Hideyoshi, who was lying on the bed watching TV.
でも、こうして二人きりになるのはずいぶん久しぶりよね。
そうやな。思えばわしもお前も老けたもんや。ジョージが生まれてから何もかもがあっという間や。
本当にあっという間よ。子供を作るの焦りすぎたかしら。
Eva's eyes looked like they were staring off into the distance. Yes, she had thought it a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Her older brother Kraus had been unable to have a child for quite some time. 6 years passed after his marriage to Natsuhi without any signs of pregnancy, which didn't please Kinzo at all. As for Eva herself, she would be removed from the Ushiromiya register anyway once she got married, so whether a successor to the head was born or not, it was all the same to her. So she had thought. But then, one day, she had a heavenly revelation. Or maybe it was the whisperings of the devil that she had heard in her greed. Perhaps she could remain in the Ushiromiya register if she gave birth to a successor first. If things went well, perhaps she could even inherit the Ushiromiya family herself. When she proposed this to Hideyoshi, he approved of it instantly. This had not been because Hideyoshi also had greedy thoughts. For Hideyoshi, who had no close relatives, it was a chance for him to feel once more that long-forgotten thing called family. So he did it for the family and she did it for the money. Okay. So he agreed without hesitation, not to fuss over which family name they were to keep upon getting married, and assented to having his name entered into the Ushiromiya family register. It wasn't easy to persuade Kinzo, but as his daughter, Eva knew Kinzo's personality well. Sigma female Eva! So she chose the time when Kinzo was most dissatisfied with Natsuhi, and expertly managed to make him accept Hideyoshi as a son-in-law. Looking at Hideyoshi, who had achieved success after starting from nothing, Kinzo might have seen a little bit of himself. He quickly grew to like Hideyoshi and permitted him to transfer into the Ushiromiya register. Big loving family, yeah, very, very loving. George would eventually become the successor to the Ushiromiya family. They had raised him strictly with that purpose in mind. George had been worth their while and had grown into a fabulous young man who wouldn't disappoint no matter where he went. That was why... Are those seagulls in the background? I guess. That was why she couldn't stand that he was in love with a servant like Shannon. So when she had learned that Shannon had died and the engagement had been invalidated, while part of her had been shocked at the gruesome crime, another part of her had been relieved that her precious George wouldn't be stolen by some servant girl. Stolen.
私、クラウス兄さんのことが昔から嫌いだったわ。偉そうで威張ってて。自分がやがては当主になるのだと自慢してて。 だから。それに一矢報いてやりたかった。でも、それは子供の頃の感情なのよ。でもその感情は、結局、自分の人生のほとんどを支配した。それだけならまだいい。その感情は、あなたやジョージまで巻き込んで振り回してしまった。
エヴァ、備え自分を責めるな。
Hideyoshi sat up and put his arm around Eva. She could feel a warm understanding from him.
わしはな、自分の人生はもうとっくに折り返しに入っとる。でもな、今日までの生活を後悔したことは一度もないで、一度もや。エヴァと一緒で他の男どもじゃ味わえん楽しい人生になったと思っとる。戦争で身寄りを失ったわしにもう一度家族のぬくもりを教えてくれた。
Oh. I can feel the love in his voice. That's sweet.
だから後宮の家には感謝しとるし、わしの唯一の家だと思っとる。わしとお前が歩んできた人生にな、無駄なことなんか何にもなかった。今日までほんまに楽しい人生やったで。
ありがとう、あなた。
Eva hung her head, burying her face in Hideyoshi's chest. Probably, no one in the parlor could even imagine that this side of Eva existed.
感謝するのはわしや。今日までお前と一緒にいて後悔した日なんてあらへん。
私もよ。あなたと一緒になれてよかった。
ジョージももう立派な大人や。わしが見張ってなくてもしっかり仕事ができる一人前や。で、正月あたりをのんびりモルジブあたりで過ごさんか。わしら二人水いらずや。
いやよ。毎年年賀状の返礼で寝る暇もないとか言ってるじゃない。
次の正月だけはなしや。年賀状は見ん。黙って下のお年玉くじだけチェックするんや。今年はカラーテレビくらい当てたいで。
やだ。モルジブでお年玉くじのチェックなんてしたくない。
じゃあそいつもなしや。水いらずのんびりでジョージが生まれる直前の新婚時代の続きをちょいとしてみんか。
それならいいわね。
モルジブはええとこらしいで。なんもない島に美しいサンゴ礁と水上コテージが並んでてな。
新婚時代の続きっていつからなの？
仕事納めしたらすぐや。旅行店に聞いてみんとわからんが、多分大晦日前には。
いや、今すぐがいい。
She wants to get sexy, in other words, okay? The man is not getting it. Peevishly or maybe coquettishly. Eva pled for his lips. The only sounds that filled the room were the distant voice of the announcer on the news, which Hideyoshi had left on, and the obnoxious pounding of the rain against the window. I mean, at least they got a room, okay? It's fine. They're free to do as they wish. There was a knock on the door and Genji entered.
奥様、お夕食の準備が整いました。お食事はまたこちらでよろしいですか？
ええ、ここへ運ばせなさい。
You definitely don't want to go into the dining hall.
南條先生はまだ厨房にいるのですか？
I don't need to see that. I really don't. I'm happy for them that they're doing that privately, away from whatever we're seeing here. It's good.
はい。次の一手を熟考したいとおっしゃっております。ご安心を。他の使用人たちとご一緒です。
源氏さんはじいさまの相手ができるくらいチェスが強いもんな。南條先生よりも強いらしいぜ。
そうなんだ。昔相手をしてもらったことがあるけど、あれは 勝たせてくれたのかな。
マリア、もうすぐ飯だそうだぜ。しかし、よく一日中テレビを見ていて飽きねえな。
いつもテレビいっぱい見てるから平気。
マリアちゃんはテレビっ子なんだね。
食事だから机の上を片付けないとダメだぜ。
It was still cluttered with the aftermath of the drawing contest we had all been having, using several pages torn out of Maria's notebook. Jessica began cleaning that up quickly. Still, everyone here sure can draw. Oh, that's really nice. Really shocking.
源氏、エヴァさんたちにもせめて食事くらい一緒にしないかとお声をかけなさい。どうせ断るでしょうが。
かしこまりました。
Yeah, they're in the middle of some business.
お父様の次はエヴァさんですか。つくづく後宮家の食卓には全員が揃いませんね。
Natsuhi felt her headache start throbbing again and lightly held her temples. The distance from the kitchen to the parlor wasn't that large, so Genji had gone there and back by himself. But the guest room was a little farther away. Natsuhi had warned him not to be alone without good reason. And just now, Nanjo had also admonished him, saying that it would be better if he held a little more concern for his safety. Genji took Kanon with him, and the two of them went to visit Eva and Hideyoshi in their guest room. Genji knocked on the door.
エヴァ様、秀吉様、お夕食の準備が整いました。
He waited a short while for them to come out, but there was no response.
源氏様、これは。
Oh god. Oh god. Kanon pointed under the door. What is it? A Western-style envelope had been inserted under it. Normally, when something was inserted this way, it would be interpreted as a message from someone outside to someone in the room. So since this might be a private note meant for Eva and Hideyoshi, it was not something that Kanon and Genji were supposed to take interest in. But this Western-style envelope was Kinzo's envelope, the same as the one Maria had taken out last night and surprised everyone with. Oof.
間違いない。親方様の封筒だ。
あるいは。
Although it had been Kinzo's envelope, the author of the letter Maria had read aloud last night had not been Kinzo. Genji continued knocking a little harder and called out in a loud voice.
エヴァ様、エヴァ様、源氏でございます。いらっしゃいますか。お返事をお願いいたします。エヴァ様。
But there was no response from inside. Oh god. Sometimes when the servants went to call some guests for a meal, the guests would be sleeping so deeply that they wouldn't wake up. In times like that, the servants would stick a letter in the door to show that they had called by, and then leave the guests be. However, despite that, Genji beat even harder on the door and called out Eva's name. But there was no answer. Even if they're like frantically going at it, like, I feel like they should be answering by now. Kanon stuck his ear up to the door and, holding his breath, listened for any sounds coming from inside.
テレビの音らしきものが。でも気配が感じられません。お部屋は空っぽかも。
Genji took out a handkerchief and careful not to touch it with his bare hands, gently pulled out the envelope which had been stuck under the door. It had been sealed with deep red sealing wax. Without a doubt, the mark on that sealing wax had come from the Ushiromiya family head's ring.
エヴァ様、エヴァ様、どうかお返事を。もうお部屋にはいらっしゃいませんか。
Even so, there was still no answer. There was a chance that the two were aimlessly walking around the mansion. This was the home Eva had grown up in. There was plenty of reason to think that she had gone out on a casual stroll. Genji groped around in his pocket and pulled out a bundle of keys, including the one that would open the guest room.
源氏様。
Kanon also understood what this meant. They would sometimes unlock a guest's door so they could go in and do things like make the beds, but only after they had made sure the guest was out. To unlock the door for a separate reason, and especially to do so when there was a chance the guests were still in there and without their permission, was an action unbecoming of a servant. Does it matter under the circumstances? However, Genji had decided. If the only problem had been that his knock hadn't received a reply, he wouldn't have gone this far. But the envelope under the door was doubtlessly Kinzo's, or rather one of Western style, or rather one of the Western style envelopes of the Ushiromiya family had. There we are. Ugh. And after last night, the sender of this envelope could be someone other than Kinzo. If this letter had been sent by someone other than Kinzo...
申し訳ございません。お部屋を失礼させていただきます。
After giving that final notice, Genji stuck one of the keys from the bundle into the keyhole. There was the sound of the door unlocking. Yeah. Yeah, no, I sometimes struggle with it. My mind is a little bit like, it's racing a little bit faster than my actual ability to read it out loud. And I jumble the words together or skip words or just, you know, read a completely different word than what it's actually written there. So, yeah. It's also my bad. I'm trying to get better at it. And then he slowly turned the knob and slowly started opening the door. Oh god. Light seeped through the crack of the door. Were they in the room? Or had they forgotten to turn out the lights? It was the sound of the door chain being pulled tight. The chain had been secured. The chain couldn't be secured from the outside. That meant that they were in the room now. The sound of voices on the TV seeped out from the room. Out of the room. See, again, it happened again. I read from instead of off. The lights, the chain, and the TV. All of these things made it clear that they were in the room. But there was no sign of them. Genji called to Eva once again through the crack of the door. But there was no answer.
Genji-sama.
Well, now you gotta go tell everybody. As part of their job, the servants were able to unlock almost any lock in the mansion. But they had no way to open a door with a chain. The only way to get by the chain was to cut it. That was certainly not permitted as part of a servant's usual work. A creepy chill was already rushing up their backs. Kanon held his breath again and tried to sense someone through the door, but even so, he was not able to sense anyone.
私は奥様をお呼びしてくる。カノンはチェーンの切断を。
はい。
Oh god, they're splitting up. No! Oh no. As Kanon rushed away hurriedly to get a cutting tool, he was called back by Genji.
待てカノン。厨房に戻り、熊沢と行動するように。断じて一人で行動してはならんぞ。
But you are acting alone.
はい、かしこまりました。
It looked like Kanon was wondering why he had to do something so troublesome in the middle of this urgent situation, but Genji had said it out of wariness. He didn't care what happened to himself. Oh. But in the worst case scenario, he didn't want anything to happen to Kanon. I'm so stressed out. In the kitchen was Kumasawa, who was piling food on the serving cart, and Nanjo, who seemed to have thought of a move that would turn the tables on Genji and had been awaiting his return, wanting to show him. But he immediately realized that something was wrong with Genji's demeanor.
どうしましたか、源氏さん。南條先生、申し訳ありませんが、この勝負は一度中断させてください。カノンはチェーンを頼む。熊沢、食事の配膳は一時中断し、カノンと同行するように。私は奥様のところへ行く。南條先生もご一緒に。
Ah, there we go. Okay, that's better.
何かあったんですかな。
Genji took Nanjo, who still didn't know what was going on, and quickly left the kitchen.
熊沢さん、申し訳ありませんが、僕と一緒に来てください。
何があったんですか、カノンさん。
Unable to take in the situation, Kumasawa said almost exactly the same thing as Nanjo, and chased after Kanon, who had flown out into the hallway. Accompanied by Kumasawa, Kanon went to the storehouse. And from amongst the tools packed in toolboxes and hanging on the walls, he looked for a tool that could be used to cut the chain.
何を探してるんですか？私も手伝いますよ。
ドアチェーンを切断するんです。大きめの番線カッターはどこだっけ？
ドアチェーンを？どうしてそんなことをするんですか？
エヴァ様たちのお部屋にチェーンが。 中にいらっしゃるはずなのに、お声をかけても返事がないんです。
It took Kumasawa some time to figure out how cutting the chain and Eva and Hideyoshi not answering were connected, but she did realize that this was an urgent situation.
これなら多分。
Kanon took down a very large bolt cutter that had been hanging on the wall. It was called a cutter, but maybe it would be easier to understand if described as having the shape of a large pair of pliers. He recalled being warned that it was a dangerous tool that could easily cut through one of your fingers. Kanon took that and rushed up the stairs. He knew it instinctively. He should fight for every minute, every second to open it quickly. Or maybe already.
待ってください、カノンさん。
早く!
Kumasawa eventually caught up with him, gasping for breath with both hands on her knees. When Kanon changed his grip on the bolt cutter and looked up at the door, he let out an ah, struck speechless.
Nan desu ka, kore wa?
Kumasawa screamed weakly, her face pallid. That was no surprise, because right there on the door, just like the magic circle that had been drawn on the shutter of the Rose Garden storehouse, there was another eerie shape drawn with paint that looked like blood. However, it was dubious whether this one could be called a magic circle, because unlike what most people would think of as a magic circle, it wasn't a circle with shapes drawn inside it, but a slightly more geometrical shape. However, the strange non-alphabetical characters written in the gaps of the figure were without doubt the same as the magic circle on the shutter. But the thing that had Kanon struck speechless was not how eerie the magic circle was. Only moments ago, this hadn't been here. He had returned to the kitchen for a short while. He had then gone to the storehouse to grab a tool and headed right back. Put those together and it couldn't have been more than 5 minutes. How could someone add something this creepy during that period of time? And as though it had just been drawn, almost like the door itself was bleeding, several unsettling vertical lines slowly dripped down, getting longer and longer. Kumasawa's knees gave way and she sank down on the spot. If Kumasawa hadn't done this first, then Kanon surely would have wanted to.
Beatrice!
ベアトリーチェ様の仕業ですよ。恐ろしや恐ろしや。
Kanon gulped, then readied the bolt cutter and approached the door. He didn't want to get close to this disturbing magic circle, and he really didn't want to touch the steadily dripping substance that looked like blood. But if he didn't get close, he couldn't cut the chain. Fighting this cold feeling, he gulped again, and after gathering his courage, went even closer, putting the bolt cutter up against the chain. He then pressed with all of his strength and cut through the chain far more easily than he had imagined. The cut chain fell into 2 separate parts, which continued to clang as they swayed back and forth.
カノンさん、足元に封筒が。しかもこれは親方様のもの。
It looked like Kumasawa had also noticed the Western-style envelope at the bottom of the door, and that the sealing wax had been sealed with the head's ring. Kanon was lost for just a second over whether he should open the letter first or check inside the room, but he decided on prioritizing his original purpose. Kanon pulled a handkerchief out of his pocket. This was so he wouldn't leave fingerprints on the door. If his worst fears had been realized, the police would want to investigate this room too. He slowly pushed the door open. He was able to hear the sound of the television that had been seeping out slightly more clearly now.
Eva-sama.
Eva was face up on the bed. On the bed with her shoes still on? Kumasawa, who had fearfully entered after Kanon and who was hiding behind his back, screamed a short hee again when she saw Eva like that. Eva's shoes had been the first part of her that Kanon had seen, so The incongruity of wearing shoes in bed was the first thing that entered his mind. But after he shifted his line of sight towards Eva's head, Kanon couldn't help but let out a short scream like Kumasawa. Right in the middle of Eva's forehead, something was set there? Growing there? No. Right in the center of her forehead, an old-fashioned knife, or some weapon like it, was stuck right in. From the base where it was stuck in, blood dripped down, staining the sheets on the other side bright red. Kumasawa's knees gave way once more and she sank down on the floor. Her mouth kept flapping open and closed, but she couldn't even scream. Eva, with some kind of weapon sticking out of her forehead, was dead. Both eyes were open wide, and the image of the person who killed her must have been burned into them. But the mouth with which to speak that truth had already been eternally sealed. Even though their forehead was the last place they wanted to look, they couldn't tear their eyes from it. Right there, the weapon was stuck into Eva's forehead, standing almost perfectly upright. And on the handle was a design so complicated you could never expect to see it on an ordinary weapon. That thing could be summed up with the word occult. It was a vulgar object with a design that might have been of some demon. Eva was on top of her bed, but the other bed was empty. Where was Hideyoshi? After taking a backwards glance at Kumasawa, still on her knees and stupefied, he checked the bathroom just in case. At the moment he opened the door, he was greeted by steam and the sound of the shower. The bathroom was of the same familiar style as most hotel bathrooms, containing both a bath and a toilet. When taking a shower, a waterproof curtain was used to keep water from flying out. I didn't expect to get visuals. That waterproof curtain was half open, and lying tumbled down in the bathtub was Hideyoshi, completely naked, both eyes still open. And those eyes were pointing right at Kanon. Oh god, that's creepy. Fuck. Just like Eva, a weapon with a demonic design was stuck into his forehead. Since his head had been under the hot water of the shower the whole time, his face wasn't half covered with and filthy with blood like Eva's had been. But the sight of him dead while still taking a shower was tragic enough. Just then Natsuhi's voice rang through the hall. She was probably coming with Genji.
またしてもこのような落書きが。この手紙は中には何と。
いえ、まだ読んでおりません。
Golden Slaughterer is lit. Yeah, at least the music is really good. We can appreciate the quality.
犯人の指紋が残っとるかもしれん。警察に渡した方がいい。
わざわざ手紙を残すくらいです。どうせ指紋など残っています。
Stating this with finality, Natsuhi picked up the envelope. I want to know what's inside too, so yes, please. And before checking its contents, she entered the room herself, where she found Eva, dead.
Eva-san! 奥様、こちらには秀吉様も。
これはむごいですな。
カノ、シャワーを止めてあげなさい。気の毒にも程があります。
はい。
Kanon gripped his handkerchief and twisted the valve, turning off the shower. In the bathtub, a small bottle of body soap had fallen with its cap off. It really looked like he had been attacked right in the middle of taking a shower. A spray of blood still clung slightly to the white bathtub, and the combination of red and white made a horrible contrast.
南條先生。わかっとる。死斑は出とらんな。死後硬直も始まっとらん。おそらく殺されてから1時間経ったかどうかというところだろう。しかしこのような柄の短い凶器で頭蓋骨を考えられん。
And also the strength of the person who would like do that. I can't imagine it must be like easy. It's not like, you know, it's skull, it's not a cardboard. Not a piece of cardboard, I mean. Nanjo checked their pulse and their pupils, making certain of their deaths once more. As Kanon watched this business-like treatment, he thought, couldn't you tell at a glance that they're dead without doing all that? I mean, he has to go through the process. It's, you know, just what it is. Nanjo thought about removing the weapon, but after deciding that where possible it would be better to hand the scene over to the police without disturbing it, there it is, he left it alone. Yeah, no, definitely don't do any of that. However, a close examination of the base revealed that it had no blade. Or rather, it wasn't shaped like a flat blade, but it was conical. He noticed that, rather than a knife, it was almost like a short-handled spear, something with the shape better suited for thrusting than slicing. Rather than a short spear, some people might call it a thick ice pick. At any rate, the original hideous purpose for which this weapon with its unsettling design was made, and exactly how that purpose was carried out, were both displayed here in such a glaring fashion that there was absolutely no need to use further words to describe it. Natsuhi, hoping to escape the repulsive steam filling the bathroom as soon as she could, covered her mouth with a handkerchief and dashed from the room. Just viewing their gruesome bodies for an instant had been enough to burn the image into her eyes. If she looked any longer, that image would surely remain in her vision for all eternity. The rising urge to vomit was exactly the same feeling she'd had that morning at the gardening storehouse. For a while, Natsuhi couldn't help but stand with her back facing the guest room, fighting that sickness in her stomach.
とにかくこの部屋を子供たちにジョージ君に見せるわけにはいきません。
Oh yeah, they wanted George to come with them to the room.
至急この部屋を閉じなさい。
見せられませんとも。両親のこんなむごい姿をとてもジョージさんには。
But the recklessly approaching footsteps were obviously George's even before he came flying into the room. There it is, yeah. I was wondering, I mean, if Natsuhi left in a hurry and things looked urgent, they probably picked up on that too. George and the other children had been waiting in the parlor, but when they had seen Genji call Natsuhi out and had noticed her turn pale and fly out of the room, they had felt that he might have been the bearer of bad news. Of course, they can put two and two together. And when they saw a large group of people gathered around the guest room, they were sure of it.
父さん！母さん！
なんだよこれ、また魔法陣かよ。
エヴァおばさんたちは無事なんだよな。おい、カノン君、これは何の騒ぎなんだ。
バトラ様。
Kanon didn't have to say anything. George's scream after he ran into the room told them everything they needed to know. Check their profiles after the scene, okay.
誰がこんなことを殺してやる殺してやる
ジョージ君しっかり
Natsuhi touched George's shoulder with her hand, but he violently shook her off. George collapsed to the floor beside Eva and buried his face on the bed in front of his mother's face, wailing. Then he pounded on the bed with his fist, over and over again.
ジョージ兄さん、しっかり。バトラ様。
Battler had his back against the wall of the hallway and was, without restraint, covering his eyes with his right hand and weeping.
ひでえぜ。心に決めた女を婚約した次の日に失った。同じ日に 親父とおふくろまで殺されるなんてよ。そんなのあんまりにもむごいじゃねえか。
Of course, he felt sorry for everyone who had died. But Battler felt far more sorry for those who had been left alone by the deaths of others. Everyone here now had lost someone close to them. George wasn't the only one he felt sorry for. However, George's pain was far greater than everyone else's.
Battler.
そりゃよ、人はいつか死ぬぜ。人間誰だっていつかは死別の悲しみと戦わなきゃならねえ日が来るだろうよ。でもよ、そいつは兄貴にとってはずっと未来の話で、しかもそいつは一つずつ順番に訪れるべきもんじゃねえかよ。むごすぎるぜ。やろうやろう、少しは人の情けってもんがねえのかよ。
おう、バトラ、泣かない泣かない。
Yeah, I know. Everyone will be revived in the Golden Land. I know. Maria tried to comfort Battler in a mechanical sounding voice. Battler violently wiped his tears.
ああ、くそ。もう流さないぜ。悔しい涙も悲しみの涙ももう二度と流さねえぜ。ああ、全然ダメだ。俺たちは魔女様に爪を食らってるわけだ。主勢一方ってわけだ。そりゃダメだぜ。全然ダメだ。チェス盤がひっくり返っちまうぜ。
Again.
野郎は俺たち羊が明日まで逃げる手段もなく怯えてるだけだろうと思ってるだろうよ。だからひっくり返すぜ。明日までこの島から逃げられねえのは野郎も同じだ。しょんべんちびりそうになりながら逃げ隠れするのは俺たちじゃねえ。野郎の方だ。暴いてやるぜ。必ずな、明日までに。いや、明日なんか待たねえ。
Oh, oops.
今夜だ。
Sorry, I pressed the thing by mistake. Oop. Exit.
今夜中にその胸ぐらを掴み上げてやる。
Boiler room. Okay.
とにかくこの部屋は警察が来るまでこのままにして施錠します。
Okay, let's see profiles. Poof. Okay, Eva, found on the bed of a guest room inside the mansion with a weapon resembling an ice pick having been rammed into her forehead. The windows and door to the room were locked from the inside and even the chain was set. No way could a human have killed her. Okay, that's an interesting statement. Hideyoshi, found in the bathroom of the same guest room that Eva was found in, with a weapon resembling an ice pick having been rammed into his forehead, just the same as Eva. You can see either of them by looking through the gap of the door while the chain is set. Can't see and can't reach. Go on. Could a human have killed them then? Hihihihi. Uh-huh. Okay, I see. Ugh. Which chapter is this? In terms of what? Where would I check that? In terms of what I started from the start menu is the very first thing, but I don't know. What else? It's episode 1, chapter 14. I think this is what you're asking. There you go. Boiler room. So, I hope this answered the question. Ah.
いいですね。
Natsuhi proclaimed it as though she didn't care whether they agreed or not. If anyone had a right to object, it would have been George, but he looked as though he had shed enough tears. Still facing away from them, George nodded slightly and rose to his feet, and everyone else agreed in response. Natsuhi still hadn't opened the head's Western-style envelope she had picked up. But since they would all be leaving the room now, she decided that she would unseal it in the parlor where everyone could watch. As soon as they walked out into the hallway to head back to the parlor, some of them immediately felt something out of place. Or maybe sensed something strange. Oh no, what is it now? Getting the creeps.
答えよ。
マリアもわかるか。こりゃ何の匂いだよ。ひでえ匂いだぜ。
As they all sniffed the air, they did notice a horrible, foul, burnt smell unlike anything any of them had ever smelled before, drifting through the hallway.
私、ちょっと厨房を見てきます。火はちゃんと消したはずなんですよ。
After noticing a burnt smell, it was natural that Kumasao, who had just been cooking in the kitchen, suspected that her own clumsiness had caused it. Ah, but, you know, remember all of the windows that would be shut and then opened, or the other way around? Or the lights that would be off and then on? Yeah. Kumasao hastily dashed away.
カノ、熊沢と行きなさい。一人にさせないように。
はい。
After nodding at Genji's order, Kanon went chasing after her. I mean, this whole thing of like not letting any of them be alone. How did that play out for Hideyoshi and Eva? It did not. So, whatever. The others, although they did not run, also followed in order to search for the source of the smell.
臭い。
これは確かに鼻が曲がりそうな匂いですね。しかし換気のために窓を開けてもいいものか。
Natsuhi was reluctant to open the windows in a situation where self-defense was so important.
換気扇を回させましょう。窓を開ける必要はないと思います。
ジョージの兄貴、話しかけても大丈夫かよ。
犯人を探す相談なら構わないよ。
Oi, George. It seemed that George had already climbed out of the abyss of his sorrow. All that filled his chest now was the quiet flame of hatred towards the killer who had stolen the lives of his beloved parents.
部屋にはチェーンがかかってた。さっき構造を見たが、とても外から細工できる代物じゃねえ。つまり、完璧な密室だったってことだ。
そうなるね。バラ庭園の倉庫の時は、シャッターの鍵を使用人室からこっそりと持ち出したのだろうとか、あるいは複製の鍵を持っていた可能性とか、いくつか方法が想像できた。でも、チェーンは違う。チェーンは一般に浸透した施錠方法の中で、最もシンプルに密室を構築できる。
チェーンだけは物理的に破壊しない限り外からはどうにもならないぜ。じゃあつまり犯人は扉からは出入りしなかったってことなのか。
こりゃ面白いや。つい数時間ほど前にも扉以外でどうやって部屋から出入りしたのかってみんなで騒いだ気がするぜ。
Back then, everyone had been making a fuss over how grandfather had disappeared from his room. Because of the receipt that Auntie Eva had stuck in the door on a whim, it was revealed that the door had remained sealed, and since Aunt Natsuhi had been the only person to enter or exit during that time, she had come under suspicion. Auntie Eva had proposed a theory about how Aunt Natsuhi might have thrown grandfather out the window and left by the door herself. But this door is much simpler. It was sealed from the inside by the door chain. The window had also been closed from the inside, and the bodies had been in the room. This time it really was, without exaggeration, a true locked room. That's right. If you include grandfather's disappearance, 3 incidents have occurred, and all 3 times the door has been the point of interest. The first was the shutter. There was a key in the servant room, and if we assume someone knew about that, this can't really be called a locked room. The next was the door sealed by the receipt. However, since Aunt Natsuhi had entered the room, She could have let grandfather out through the window or thrown him out, and she would have been able to lock the window before leaving. Or, like my crazy theory, he could have hidden until the receipt was gone and left the room later. Basically, this door can be defeated with a handful of desperate tricks. In that sense, you really can't call this one a locked room either. And now we have the door sealed with the door chain. Finally, we have to give up. The window, the door, everything had been locked from the inside. It was a perfect locked room. The first hadn't been a locked room because everyone could be suspected. The second hadn't been a locked room because Aunt Natsuhi could be suspected. But this time, no one can be suspected. This room was a perfect locked room sealed by a door chain that denied access equally to everyone.
なら、犯人は室内に入らずに犯行に及んだ。部屋の外から何らかの方法で。
確かに。チェーンである以上、人が通れるほどは開けなくても、多少の隙間を空けることができる。ノックして顔を覗かせたところを襲うとか。いや、甘いか。
甘いよな。エヴァおばさんの遺体が扉のすぐそばだったなら、それも考えたぜ。だが、エヴァおばさんは部屋の奥のベッドの上。しかも、秀吉おじさんはバスルームだった。チェーンの隙間からでは、姿を見ることもできねえし、手を伸ばすこともできねえ。ちくしょう。全然ダメだぜ。さっぱりだ。
Something was tugging softly at my sleeve. It was Maria.
おお、満足？
満足って何がだよ。
バトラは親族の誰かを疑うのが嫌だから、犯人はベアトリーチェであってほしいと願ったよ。だからベアトリーチェは叶えた。バトラが言った通り、絶対に人間には無理なことをして、バトラに魔女の存在を信じさせてくれ。なのにわがまま。
I tapped Maria, who was laughing unpleasantly on the head with my fist.
ああ、叶えてくれてありがとうよ。今のはその礼と。不謹慎な時に笑ったことへの教育的指導だ。
Ooh. Oh, bear.
それより教えやがれ。エヴァおばさんたちの部屋の扉にも、また怪しげな落書きがされていた。あれもまた魔法陣なのか。
あれは特に覚えやすい特徴的な形なんだから、あのくらい知っててほしいね。
Just say what it is, okay? You don't need to. Okay, there you go. Thank you, Butler.
知らねえから花を持たせてやってんだ。ごちゃごちゃ言わねえで解説しろい。
There we go.
バトラは暴力的だね。
Let's abuse Maria. I don't like violence, but in moments like these, a certain type of composure might be in order. And if this is one way to get her to, you know, just freaking get to the point, woman, girl, child, witch, whatever you are. Yes, fine, let's go.
あんまり意地悪すると教えないよ。あいたい。言うよ、このげんこつ男。あれは月の一の魔法陣だよ。
何の意味がある？その魔法陣のご利益は？書かれてるヘブライ語の意味は？
記されているのは旧約聖書詩編第107編の16節。主は聖堂の扉を破り、鉄の栓抜きを打ち破ってくださいました。魔法陣の効用は2つ。1つはいかなる方法によって閉ざされた扉でも開くことができる。
そりゃ便利な魔法だぜ。つまり魔法の力に頼らなきゃ開けぬ密室の扉っていう。もう一つの効用は、
開かぬ扉を八方塞がりの事態に見立て扉を開く。難解な事態の時に用いることで、それまで思いつきもしなかった解決策を与えてくれるんだよ。平たく言うと、観察力や洞察力、 ひらめきや直感を授けてくれるんだね。ベアトリーチェはバトラごとき人間風情にこの扉の開き方がわかるものかって挑発してるんだよ。あいた。
よーし、もう黙れご苦労。上等だぜ。その魔女の挑戦受けてやら。
マリアちゃん、この世に魔女も悪魔も存在しない。父さんと母さんは誰かが殺した。それが僕のよく知る人間なのか知らない人間なのかはわからない。でもそのどちらであっても必ず人間なんだ。
しかしどうやって、せいぜい10センチ程度しか開かない扉の隙間からどうやったら室内の2人を。
それにしても耐え難い匂いです。一体何事なのですか？
Kanon and Kumasawa, who had gone ahead, realized before they even reached the kitchen that the smell wasn't coming from there. That was because on their way to the kitchen, they noticed that an even thicker wave of stench was rising up from the stairs leading to the basement.
ボイラー室。
Ah,
またボイラーの調子が悪いんでしょうか。
I see. Those stairs led to the underground boiler room. The mansion's boiler was old and had been playing up recently. Both of them had witnessed problems with the boiler on several occasions, but they had never smelled it smelled it belching out a stench like this before. Ugh. Okay. Slam.
今の音は。
The sound that they had heard from the basement had definitely been the sound of a door closing. Although she did phrase it as a question, Kumasawa too had already realized that the sound couldn't have been anything else. Kumasawa was so surprised at that sound that her knees gave way yet again and she cowered. Because at that very moment, no one could have been in the boiler room. Just a few seconds ago, everyone had been crowded together in Eva and Hideyoshi's room. So who caused the sound of a door closing just now?
カノンさん。
Instantly gathering the situation, Kanon ran down towards the basement. Since they had heard the sound of a door closing just now, and there was no trace of someone climbing the stairs, it meant that the person who had closed the door was now inside the boiler room. If the boiler room had been a dead end, Kanon wouldn't have rushed in so hastily. But Kanon was a servant, so he knew. There were two entrances, one that opened to the mansion and one that opened to the courtyard. If he didn't chase them now, they might slip away. I'm so stressed out. Oh my god. The music is not helping. Kumasawa reached the same conclusion long after Kanon did. But she couldn't let him go alone. If the thing in the boiler room was the killer, an opponent who had easily killed 6 adults in the first murder, then Kanon would be no match if he simply confronted them alone. Yes, add an old lady to the mix and everything is fixed. For sure. Of course, by this argument, Kumasawa joining him alone wouldn't mean anything. Yes, thank you. But, at any rate, after a delay, Kumasawa decided that she mustn't let Kanon go alone, and she dashed down the stairs. Oh my god. At that time, Kanon was already in the boiler room. The boiler room's characteristic damp heat tormented him. It had always been an unpleasantly smelly and hot place. And on top of that, the room was full of that horrible stench, which made Kanon feel like he was going to be sick. There was no doubt that this room was the origin. In that case, Kanon should have been searching for where the smell was coming from. However, Kanon kept gazing straight forward as he grabbed a hatchet from a tool shelf just off to the side of the door. He hadn't stretched out his hand because he wanted a hatchet. He had wanted to grab a weapon, any weapon. Why? So stressed out. Oh my god. Kanon gazed into the darkness where the naked light bulb couldn't pierce. Then he answered.
ルーレットは数字と赤黒にかけて配当を競い合う。だが 赤か黒かのようなリスクの低い賭けはその程度の配当しか与えられない。
I'm literally holding my breath right now. Oh my god! The words coming from Kanon's mouth were swallowed up by the darkness. That darkness suddenly started to swirl, glittering. It was a very fantastical scene. Golden sparkling butterflies that hid in the shadows all over the boiler room flapped their wings, twinkling beautifully, and disappeared into the darkness, gathering together. Kanon continued speaking, directing his words at the darkness as it swallowed the butterflies up. We should make bets for whether Kanon survives the scene. Oh, please, I don't want him gone, at least not yet. I really like him as a character, and I really love his voice. Please, I need more of that. But as the butterflies gathered in the darkness, they... probably... No, they must have... laughed. But Kanon continued to speak without faltering in the slightest.
逆により的中率の低いかけ方をすればそのリスクに比例した配当が与えられる。親方様は天文学的なリスクを的中できることを奇跡と呼び、その結果得られる天文学的な配当を魔法と呼んでいた。親方様とお前がどんな魔法を求めてルーレットに挑んでいるのか。しかしお前は忘れている。ルーレットには赤でも黒でもない目が出うることを。
Oh, sorry, I was too fast there. Roulette has a special pocket called Zero, which means that the house takes everything in certain variants of the game, meaning that all of the coins bet on the table will be swept up, just as though everyone has forfeit.
僕は一つだけ心に決めていた。もしシャノンが殺されて僕が生き残るようなことがあったなら、この身を投げ出してお前のルーレットを全て台無しにしてやろうと。これは親方様が決めたルールでも、ましてやお前が決めたルールでもない。このルールは僕が作った。僕はもう家具じゃない。お前のルーレットのゼロなんだ。
Oh my god, the shivers. Okay. Kanon's face twisted with humiliation. It was clear that he had been dealt ridicule in response to his self-denial. Kanon's brow creased even further, and a furious expression that he had never shown anyone appeared on his face. The hand grasping the hatchet was shaking. His sweat became drops which slid down. It was clear that the emotion causing Kanon's hand to shake was not anger alone. However, Kanon suppressed that emotion.
僕はもうお前の言葉に惑わされたりはしない。悪魔のルーレットはこれでおしまいだ。地獄にてさらに1000年。次の召喚者を待つがいい。ベアドリーチェ！
When Kanon swung the hatchet upwards and tried to dive into the darkness definitely sneered. It sneered at that courage as vulgar, lazy, futile, and meaningless. Kanon, his hatchet still held aloft, couldn't take another step after that. With a clang, the hatchet that Kanon had been grasping fell and rolled on the floor. Oh god. And following that, with a pair of thuds, Kanon's knees hit left, then right. That hand, which looked like it was trying to catch the sky, now that the hatchet had been dropped, gradually lowered and rested on his chest. Then the other hand did the same. Right there was a handle with a demon-shaped design engraved upon it. The same type of weapon that had been stabbed into Eva and Hideyoshi's foreheads was in Kanon's chest. Fresh blood dribbled from the corner of Kanon's mouth as it twisted in anguish. It was makeup too powerful for Kanon's white skin. Around this scene, the glittering gold butterflies danced mesmerizingly through the darkness. It was a beautiful, beautiful dance. A funeral march of tribute, ridicule, and contempt for a single boy's self-sacrifice. Kanon had already been prepared for his own death, but he attempted one last measure of resistance. To reject death in at least the form it had been delivered to him. With both hands, he grasped the handle of the weapon sticking into his chest. And gritting his teeth at the acute, unearthly pain, he pulled it out. For only a moment, a bright red spray gushed out. It made an unpleasant bloop sound. It probably resembled the sound of Kanon's soul as it was sucked into the swamp of the dead.
Kanon-san?
Kumasawa screamed at the incomprehensible sight in front of her. Kanon was lying in a pool of blood. Kumasawa's heart was a complete mess. Ah, what a terrible fate. He wouldn't have been killed if I had been with him. Ah, what incredible fortune. If I had been with him, I might have been killed too. As she screamed, her expression was filled with complete confusion, and all of the muscles of her face were pulled up almost as though she was smiling while crying. Yeah, I can totally understand. No one could have made fun of an expression such as this. The first one to dash in was Natsuhi with rifle at the ready. Battler and Genji dashed in after her. Normally, they probably would have started discussing the origin of that violent stench filling the boiler room. But after they saw Kanon, who was lying on the ground as if he were drowning in an ocean of his own blood, the stench wasn't important anymore.
Kanon! Genji, Nanjo-sensei,
Natsuhi realized that even though Kanon was on the verge of death, he was still conscious, so she sent Genji to get the doctor. Natsuhi, holding the rifle aloft, faced the darkness in the center of the boiler room and shouted, Battler, thinking quickly, took a large flashlight from the tool shelf alongside the door and used its light to cut through the darkness Natsuhi was glaring into. But the light only shone on mechanical-looking piping and a door. The door had been left open a small crack, and it was obvious that someone had left through there in a hurry.
Natsuhi-oba-san, あの扉はどこへ?
Genji, あの扉はどこに通じているのですか?
中庭です。
逃がすかよ! くそ、この野郎!
Battler let out a war cry as he slammed into the door. Cool air from outside suddenly rushed in. There were some thin, rough stairs leading up. Battler ran up them, shouting. Natsuhi also rushed up the stairs, chasing after Battler. At the top was the courtyard. The courtyard of the mansion had been built strictly for lighting purposes, so it wasn't a very elegant place. Because it was surrounded on all sides, the air was calm and completely undisturbed, even though they could hear the sound of strong winds. There was only the gentle, sorrowful rain. Through the cold, scattered raindrops, Battler dashed up the stairs and into the courtyard where he looked in every direction. Of course, the odds of him finding a suspicious silhouette just standing around nonchalantly were pretty much zero. Battler turned around, looking in all directions. He turned again and again. He kept spinning until he almost lost his sense of direction. He prayed that he would see the culprit somewhere in this scenery. But there was no chance. All he saw as he spun was more and more of the mansion's heartless walls and windows. Furthermore, there were 2 entrances into the mansion from the courtyard, and neither of them were locked. Because the courtyard couldn't be entered from outside the mansion, the doors had been built without locks. He couldn't tell which one they had left through. He had to give up. Battler pounded the wall with his fist, swearing,
Battler君、一人で先走ってはダメです。Battler君。
Battler put his head against the wall and scratched at it with his fingernails as he cried.
畜生畜生畜生エヴァおばさんに秀吉おじさん、さらにカノン君かよ。6人も殺しやがった。飽き足らずさらに3人も殺しやがった。ふざけるなふざけるな。エヴァおばさんも秀吉おじさんも昔からいつも優しくしてくれる愉快なおばさんたちだったじゃねえかよ。カノン君とは昨日会ったばかりだが、きっとこれから仲良くなれたと思うぜ。なんで殺したんだ。どうして人ってのはな、殺しちまったらな、二度と生き返らねえんだぞ。タケノコみてえにひょいひょい生えてきちゃ来ねえんだぞ。どうして殺すんだよ。どうして
Battler was a boy who could understand the feelings of pain and regret in a person's heart. So he cried, with all his strength. Natsuhi, who had always thought of Battler as a strong person, was a little surprised to find that he had this delicate side, and at the same time understood how easily hurt the heart of a young person could be. So she held him. Aww.
大丈夫です。あなたも、ジョージ君も、マリアちゃんも、ジェシカも。私が絶対に守ります。母として、そして、後宮家の代表として。
Battler, after sobbing into Natsuhi's chest for a while, wiped his tears with a bitter smile and tried to convey that he had cried more than enough already, just as he had done the times before.
とにかく、一度下に戻りましょう。犯人を探すより、自分たちの身を守る方が最優先です。明日になれば船が来る。そうすれば警察がやってきて、すべてを白日のもとにさらし出してくれるでしょう。犯人がどうあがこうとも、この島から逃げられるものですか。
そうっすね。
I can't believe he's not making a joke about touching her chest. I am glad he's not.
警察さえ来れば。
Not that there is ever a moment that's appropriate for that. But this is the most inappropriate moment to make that kind of joke. And also, I don't know, at least the novel is trying to convey that he is genuinely hurting, so his mind is definitely not there. When the seagulls cry, the crime will be solved. But for some reason, Battler felt a slight sense of uneasiness, as if the seagulls would never cry again. That couldn't be true. When the typhoon passes, the lively seagulls should return to the harbor again. Keyword is should. And when the typhoon passes. That's also another keyword. When. I returned to the boiler room along with Aunt Natsuhi and told the room weakly that we hadn't found anything. They told me that Dr. Nanjo and Georgianki had carried Kanon-kun to the servant room. The servant room had a first aid kit and a sink and could apparently function as a nurse's office. Kumasawa-san and Jessica had accompanied them. Stains from Kanonkun's blood remained on the floor. Judging by the large amount of blood lost and the ruthless shape of the weapon that had fallen unceremoniously to the ground, I figured that Dr. Nanjo's treatment would probably end in vain. That weapon was doubtlessly the same type that had been stuck in Auntie Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi's foreheads. But wait, isn't the demonic design on the handle a little different? There seemed to be some small differences in that part. Still, as far as their overall shape was concerned, the weapons were all of the same type. Though it had seemed brutal, we'd left the weapons stuck into Auntie Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi to preserve the crime scene. So this was the first time I was able to have a perfect view of the entire weapon. Indeed, the weapon was not bladed like a knife, but shaped like an ice pick, or rather a thin stake. Ah, I see what you mean. The fact that his mind is not even going there amplifies just how much hurt he's feeling. That is true. And also, it had the spiral-shaped design, sort of like a drill. To use a disturbing analogy, it looked like something that might be driven into the hearts of human sacrifices in some demonic ritual. Including the handle, it was about 25 centimeters long. Half of that was the stake-shaped part, which was stained with deep red blood. The length of the blood-stained part made it clear just how deeply it must have penetrated into Kanokun's chest. But Aunt Natsuhi and the rest were not even looking at the weapon, instead standing in front of the incinerator where the horrible stench was emanating from. They had probably pulled that out of the furnace where it must have been burning. What that? It was still smoldering and kept sending out dense waves of that awfully unpleasant smell. Genji's-san and Maria were staring down at it. Aunt Natsuhi probably couldn't stand to look directly at it. What the fuck was it? Okay. If you can't stop it, lead it. Oh god. Oh god. I thought that after everything that's happened, nothing could surprise me anymore, but this was... I stood there for a while moaning with a rising urge to vomit. The true nature of that unearthly stench was the charred smell from within the incinerator. Of a burning corpse. The clothes, the surface of the body, and the hair were all hideously burned. That grotesque corpse was in a state where not the face, nor the age, nor even the gender could be guessed at. Oh, God. But when I thought about it calmly, I realized that the corpse appearing at this time could only be one person. Grandfather, who had disappeared that morning and whose whereabouts had been unknown.
おそらく親方様だと思います。
私も同感です。
No, I appreciate it. At least I have something to laugh at when the situation is like this. Oh god.
このようなお姿でお亡くなりになるとは。おいたわしや。
でも、この死体、本当にじい様だって保証はあるんすか？こうも黒焦げじゃ、性別さえも想像つかないってのに。
バトラ君、足をご覧なさい。
Aunt Natsuhi, with her handkerchief over her mouth and her eyes averted, pointed and told me to look at the burnt corpse's feet.
両足の指です。よくご覧になってください。
本当だ。
Just as Genji-san had said, there were 6 toes on each foot. Each of the toes had been arranged so normally that I hadn't noticed.
親方様はお生まれの時から両足の指に特徴がございました。そして故に親方様は後宮家の再興を託されたのです。
後宮家には昔から生まれつき多子症の方が多かったそうです。多分 遺伝的なものでしょう。
Polydactyly literally means many fingers. Because of a little mistake by God, when the person is born, one of their toes or fingers splits into two, and the total number increases. But the big deal isn't usually made of polydactyly in the world at large. That's because it isn't a disease, but something people are born with. So the hospital is already aware of it when they are still babies, and at about the time they turn 1 year old, they are given surgery to make them normal. So even if a child has polydactyly, it is treated before they become self-aware, so they might not even remember it themselves. Incidentally, it seems that it can occur with a probability of about 1 in every 2,000 babies, so even though it's not usually seen, it isn't that rare at all. Speaking of which, I think Uncle Hideyoshi mentioned something to me long ago. Something about how even Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the man who unified Japan at the end of the Sengoku period, possessed 6 fingers on one hand. According to Aunt Natsuhi, among the many Ushiromiya family heads, the ones praised most for their wisdom had all possessed polydactyly. Because of that, when grandfather was born, his relatives were all excited at the thought that he might become another wise leader. And when the leading relatives all died in the Great Kanto earthquake, it was apparently argued that if anyone could restore the family from that, it would be grandfather because of the auspicious sign of his birth. If grandfather thought being the head was not a bad gig, this 6th toe must have been pretty lucky for him. Come to think of it, I think I've heard about some country where it's believed that people with polydactyly should be treated as gods and revered. This is beside the point, but it's fairly common in mystery novels for a corpse to be burned to hide whose body it is. But it looks like in grandfather's case, just being toasted wasn't enough to hide the proof of his identity. And grandfather's body was not simply burnt. Just like Auntie Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi and Kanon-kun too, who had been stabbed in his chest. He had one of those demon's ice picks stuck into his forehead.
指に当主の指輪がありません。
昨夜の手紙の通りということですか。お父様、さぞやご無念でしょう。
Aunt Natsuhi let her head droop and close her eyes tightly. This room had also become a vital crime scene for us to hand over to the police. It was decided that we would leave grandfather's corpse here and lock the room, sealing it. It wasn't clear when grandfather's corpse started burning in the incinerator. Since, according to Genji-san, the flames hadn't been that strong, the body must have started burning a long time ago. And that stench must have slowly crept up out of the furnace and filled the room bit by bit, eventually pouring out and climbing up the staircase. Putting aside whether he was... Oh my god. Whether he was rare or well done? Grandfather had been brought out, killed, and burned, even though he had started out in the locked room created by his auto-lock. There's probably no doubting this. However, according to Genji-san, the boiler room is usually locked. The probability that someone outside our group was lurking around committing the crimes was now overwhelmingly high, and there was also a good chance that this person was walking around with something like a master key. Oh, good one. Oh god. After all, the doors and windows throughout the mansion had been checked. But despite that, the culprit was freely strutting around the mansion. After this latest crime, can we now be sure that the 19th person exists? They haven't shown themselves once, and yet they're trying to tout their existence. Along with Kiryu-san's chessboard theory, I've been using this contradiction to deny the existence of a 19th person. By flipping over the chessboard once more, the very fact that this crime makes it perfectly obvious that the 19th person exists means that the existence of the 19th person is even less possible. As long as that 19th person doesn't show themselves in front of us, if the culprit could get grandfather out through the door sealed by the receipt, if they could kill Auntie Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi from the other side of the door sealed by a chain, then is it possible for them to even create a fictional 19th person through strange tricks and devices? Ah, yeah, I need to read the... Yes, thank you, Bea, for the reminder. Hey, Bancho. Nice to have you around. I am finding it very interesting and entertaining and mind-blowing and yeah, all the stuff. And I have no idea what is happening, but I'm just, you know, taking it as the story unfolds. Oof. If we still want to believe that the culprit is among us, then the list of suspects is very short. The four of us kids, Aunt Natsuhi, Genji-san, Kumasawa-bachan, and Dr. Nanjo. One of these people has to be the culprit. Wait, we can't be sure of that. Just a second ago, we started doubting whether the body here was actually grandfather's, right? Maybe we should try thinking of the other bodies in the same way. Yes, thank you very much. There we are. For example, the first 6 all had their faces horribly destroyed. Some of the bodies had kept enough of their faces for us to confirm who they were, but my old bastard, for example, thank you, there we are, had lost his entire face as though it had been peeled off. We'd only figured out which body was which by their clothes and surroundings. Had the culprit prepared a fake corpse beforehand and disguised it to make it look like they died, then hid somewhere and continued their killing spree? It sounds ridiculous, but that doesn't mean it's an impossible trick. At this point, everything, any way that this was pulled off can sound ridiculous. So, you cannot eliminate things on the basis that they sound ridiculous. At this point, the situation itself is ridiculous. It's too early to give in to this 19th person. No, this witch. Oh god. Old bastard is us.
それ以上しげしげと見てはなりません。さあ、バトラ君もカノンの容体も気になりますし、いつまでもこのようなところにはいられません。戻りましょう。
I would be incredibly pleasantly surprised if Kanon could made it, but I don't have any hope at this point. Maria hadn't gone out with everyone else, but had remained in the boiler room. The thing she was staring fixedly at was probably not grandfather's body, but the demon's ice pick that was sticking out of his forehead. No doubt an irresistible item for the obsessed. I rapped her on the head.
おい、マリア。ベアトリーチェの目的は何なんだ？俺たち全員の命か。
ベアトリーチェはもうすぐ蘇るんだよ。その時、誰も生き残れはしない。
よくも笑えるもんだぜ。自分だけ蚊帳の外だと思ってるのか？
Maria is not sus.
どうして自分の身に危機が迫っていると感じない？
At this point, I can't dismiss anyone on anything.
どうして怯えない？
ベアトリーチェは約束してくれたもん。私は黄金鏡へ連れて行ってもらえるんだよ。そこはね、しがらみも何もない全ての人たちがずっと一緒にいつまでも優しくし合っていける素敵な場所なんだよ。私は楽しみだよ。
That sounds like the place where the lights and everybody's gone to the rapture were taking people.
その時はもうすぐだもん。
Oh, sorry, I pressed too fast. Just what kind of person is Maria? I only know what Maria was like 6 years ago when she was 3. She had been pure and obedient, a good kid. This new Maria 6 years later and the Maria I knew didn't seem to fit together. Just who is she, this witch who calls herself Maria? To her, with her obstinate belief in witches, the series of unsolvable crimes is proof that witches actually exist. Every time something occurs that would be difficult for a human, it becomes a little harder for the rest of us to not believe in that witch called Beatrice. It must be an intense pleasure for Maria to see her relatives, who once firmly denied the witch's existence, start acknowledging her existence one by one. Is that why she is in high spirits?
マリア、もう一遍だけ聞く。どうせ答えは同じだろうが、もう一遍だけ聞く。お前は昨日、 バラ庭園で手紙をもらった。そいつは誰なんだ？
Beatrice.
おお、だからベアトリーチェ。
Of course.
バトラがまだ信じない。おお。
Maria only repeated what she had already said. Maria had met with the 19th person, the witch. Had that really been a 19th person, or had that been one of the 18 who told her to say otherwise? All that's certain is that Maria has been with the rest of us constantly and has always had an alibi and hasn't done anything that would put her under suspicion. She's simply overjoyed at being made Beatrice's messenger and certainly is not our 19th person. I think. I know. I know. Any type of like logical inference like that you can put together with the information you have now, it would all sound nice and good, but there's still this like little pang in your stomach, that this feeling in your heart that makes you add an I think, because you can't be sure. Not so. Oh, yeah. That's right. I wonder what's written in the letter we picked up in Auntie Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi's room. Yes, please, thank you, I want to know. Aunt Natsuhi should still have it with her. Alright, let's read profiles after this loads. Thank you very much. So, we do Kinzo then. Okay. Ushiromiya Kinzo burned in an incinerator with a weapon resembling an ice pick having been rammed into his forehead. The old mage's wish scattered, ungranted. This is but one possible result of the gamble he always knew was not in his favor. Oh my god. Okay. In the end, Kanon-kun did not regain consciousness. Even though Dr. Nanjo and the rest did all they could to heal him, there was very little that could be done on an island like this without medicine or proper facilities. However, Kanon-kun was the only human ever to confront the culprit. If only he could give us some kind of clue. But by the time he was carried here, it was already too late.
申し訳ありません。あのような重傷を設備のないところではどうしようも。
Read Kanon-kun too. Okay, yeah. Sorry. You're right. With a weapon resembling an ice pick having been rammed into his chest, he was found in the boiler room. How presumptuous for furniture. Fuck you. That's all I have to say. Ah.
いえ、無理もないことです。最善を尽くしてくださり、ありがとうございました。
Dr. Nanjo's shirt had been sprayed by a violent spurt of blood, so it was easy to imagine the devotion with which he had tried to save Kanon-kun's life up until the very last second. Jessica was crouched in the corridor crying in anguish. She had probably been taking care of Kanon-kun until the moment of his death. George Aniki tried to approach her with words of comfort, but when Jessica pushed him away, he stopped trying to interfere and left her alone.
私がカノンさんを一人で行かせなければ。
気に病むことはない。仮に一緒だったら熊沢も襲われていたかもしれん。それに愚かにも先走ったゆえの自業自得だ。
そんな言い方ってねえぜ。カノン君は犯人の姿を見つけて勇敢に立ち向かったんだ。
Thank you, Jessica. Yes, my thoughts exactly.
熊沢さんも一緒だったら犯人は躊躇して逃げることを選んだかもしれない。
I mean, I wouldn't pin it too much on Kumasawa, because she's old and Kanon ran ahead, who obviously he's much younger and like has more vitality, let's say, and got there faster, and he made a choice. And that's what it is, and I respect him for it. Don't blame Kumasawa too much, though. Oof. Emotion-filled words that I never thought I'd hear from the normally tactful Jessica tumbled out of her mouth. Kumasawa, looking truly sorry, could do nothing but hang her head.
ジェシカ、今は言葉をかけるべきじゃない。僕だって。そしてバトラ君もだろう。もう何が何だかわからなくて心が張り裂けそうだよ。
There were tears in George Aniki's eyes again. Seeing Jessica break down crying probably brought back the pain of losing his parents. I had already cried myself dry, so I didn't want to cry anymore. However, I felt myself the pain in their hearts.
大丈夫だよ、ジェシカお姉ちゃん。カノンにだってまたすぐ会えるよ。
よしてくれよ。そういう慰めはいらねえぜ。
ベアトリーチェは死者も失った愛すらも蘇らせる。だからきっとすぐに会えるよ。そしてきっとみんなで穏やかに過ごせるから。
カノン君を殺したのがマリアに昨日手紙を渡したっていうベアトリーチェなのか。そいつはどこにいるんだよ。どこに隠れてるんだよ。私が見つけて引き裂いてやる。言えよ。知ってるんだろ、犯人の正体を。
Okay, no.
お前は何を知っていて何を隠してるんだ。話しやがれ。
お嬢様、おやめください。
ベアトリーチェはいる。
畜生、ケンジさん話せよ。マリアが犯人を知ってる。しかもそいつは知ってて隠してるんだ。そして私たちの内情を伝えて殺しの手引きをしてるに違いないんだぜ。
ジェシカ、静かにしなさい。
Jessica rushed at Maria and grabbed hold of her. Genji tried to stop her, but Jessica couldn't be calmed. The next thing I heard was the sound of Aunt Natsuhi slapping Jessica's face. After that, only Jessica's sorrowful sobbing voice resounded throughout the hall.
マリアちゃん、僕は君が断じて犯人ではないことを知っている。君はいつも僕たちと一緒にいたし、犯人なんかと通じている時間はなかった。だから聞かせてほしい。君に昨日手紙を渡したベアトリーチェとは誰なんだい？
Although those words seemed kind, they clearly showed that George still had some doubts about Maria. He hadn't tackled Maria, however, he felt exactly the same way Jessica did.
兄貴、同じことは俺もさっき聞いたぜ。返事は同じさ。
マリアちゃんの口から聞きたい。ベアトリーチェとは誰なんだい？
Maria's the culprit, case closed.
言ってもどうせ信じない。
それはどういう意味だい？ひょっとして僕らのよく知る人物が犯人で、君は何かの事情からそれをかばうために黙っているというのかい？君はあの手紙を誰にもらったんだい？
ベアトリーチェにもらったんだよ。何度だって言う。手紙はベアトリーチェにもらった。ジョージお兄ちゃんがベアトリーチェを信じないのは殴れる相手じゃないから？ジョージお兄ちゃんはやるせない気持ちを暴力に変えて誰かにぶつけたいと思っている。だから殴れる相手が人間じゃなきゃ収まりがつかない。だからそんなジョージお兄ちゃんには真実を話しても受け入れられない。だから言っても無駄。信じない。でもマリアは何度も言うよ。真実だから言うよ。ベアトリーチェはね、いるの。
Least insane 9-year-old. I have no idea what to think about her.
黄金鏡の扉はもうすぐ開かれるよ。マリアはそこに行くの。ベアトリーチェが約束してくれたの。その世界ではママも優しくてパパも一緒で優しいの。マリアは早くそこへ行きたいの。みんなはベアトリーチェのことを恐れている。そしてそれは無理もないことだけど、なら安心して。ベアトリーチェは言ってたよ。台風が去るまでに全てを終わらせるからって。
Ay, ow. My controller vibrated too, and that took me by surprise.
饒舌なマリアも嫌いじゃねえが、とりあえずはそのくらいにしとけ。魔女はいるいる言ってたお前にとって、さぞや現状は愉快だろうが、とりあえずそいつはお前だけで噛み締めとけ。他人にまで押し付けるんじゃねえ。
おお。
こいつ前から気持ち悪いやつだとは思ってたけど、おかしいぜ。どっかおかしいぜ。バトラは思わねえのかよ。ケンジさんは、熊沢さんは、母さんはどうだよ。マリアは犯人の正体を知ってて隠してる。確かに直接手を下してるわけじゃないかもしれない。でも間違いなく犯人の一味だぜ。そうさ、スパイさ。私たちと一緒になんかいさせられないぜ。
マリアちゃん、不謹慎な話を慎むべき時もあることを知りなさい。これ以上混乱に油を注ぐような真似が過ぎれば、おばさんも本気で怒ります。
Natsuki glared at Maria with frightening eyes. Maria was used to Auntie Rosa's loud style of scolding, but she apparently hadn't developed a resistance to this kind of silent telling off. She shrugged and kept her mouth shut. A desolate feeling filled the room. It felt as though things would just get more complicated if anyone spoke. How many people had already died? 6 in Dad's group. Also both Auntie Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi. Kanon-kun, grandfather. There were a whole 18 people on this island. 10 of those had been killed. More than half of us had been killed. And at this stage, there was absolutely no guarantee that the remaining 8 were going to be alright.
とにかく、今は仲違いをしている時ではありません。犯人が神出鬼没に屋敷内を出入りしていることが間違いなくなった今、私たちは明日まで身を守ることだけに専念しなくてはなりません。
夏日おばさんに極めて同感だぜ。犯人探しは今夜ゆっくりできるさ。今はどこで籠城するかを考えた方がいい。
As I said this, I pointed out the clock to everyone. It was already 8 at night. We had been receiving shocks over and over again since the early morning, and both our bodies and our minds were completely tired out. There was still a long time until tomorrow. We needed to find some place to barricade ourselves in, somewhere we could rest our bodies and feel even the slightest bit safe. And you didn't end up having dinner at all, so...
私も同感ですな。私も含め、もうみんな体も心も限界まで打ちのめされています。今からそれを考えた方が賢明でしょうな。
そういうこった。敵はマスターキーに準ずるものを持っている公算が高い。
シャノンやカノン君、ゴーダさんはマスターキーを持ってましたか？
はい。勤務時間中だったなら身につけていたはずです。
現場をいじらない方がいいってんで、そこまでは調べなかったろうが、誰かの鍵が奪われている可能性は否定できねえな。
そもそも犯人はバラ庭園倉庫のシャッターを開けるために一度使用人室を訪れている可能性があります。そこでマスターキーをすでに入手していると考えて間違いないでしょう。
There were many servants serving the Ushiromiya family. Because of that, there were several master keys. Furthermore, every time the shifts changed, the keys were passed between servants. She had to admit that the arrangement had been somewhat sloppy.
仮に殺された使用人の誰かのポケットからその鍵でも開けられない安全な場所はあるのか？
私たちはお仕事の都合上、すべてのお部屋の鍵を預かっております。お屋敷もゲストハウスもすべてです。
つまり私たちはどこへ立てこもって鍵をかけようと意味がないってわけだ。上等だぜ。鍵なんかいるもんか。来るなら来やがれってんだ。返り討ちにしてやるぜ。
敵は正面から来ないよ。最初の6人はともかく、母さんたちやカノン君、そしておじい様の霊を見る限り、敵は孤立した人間だけを狙ってる。一部屋に固まっている僕たちのところへ 堂々と乗り込んでこられるほどの力はないんだよ。
そうだな。兄貴の言う通りだ。ひょっとすると、おばさんのライフル銃が抑止効果として成立してるのかもしれないぜ。
なら良いのですが。
マリア、言いたいことがあるんだろうが、そいつは飲み込んでしばらく黙ってろ。
Maria probably wanted to say that witches weren't afraid of things like guns or something like that. But if she were to say it out loud, the atmosphere around here would start to get pretty edgy. I had noticed and decided to put a stop to it.
よろしいでしょうか。一箇所だけ。使用人の鍵束でも入れない場所が。
Kinzo's place?
それはどこです？
はい。親方様の書斎です。
Yeah.
私は反対だぜ。じい様の気持ち悪い部屋になんか入りたくない。
あの部屋に入れる鍵は何本あるんですか
？2本です。1本は常に私が、もう1本は親方様がお持ちでしたが、先ほどボイラー室の遺体からこれを。
Genji-san took a handkerchief out of his pocket and opened it, showing us the burnt and filthy key to the study. Then he showed it alongside his own key, which he had once lent to Aunt Natsuhi.
本来なら警察のために鍵も残すべきだったのですが、親方様より書斎の留守は必ず守るようにと仰せつけられておりましたもので、私が。 なるほど。ということは金蔵さんの書斎は唯一の安全地帯というわけですな。
そういうことになりますね。あの怪しげな匂いの部屋に一晩も立てこもるなど考えたくもありませんが、あの部屋が一番安全であることを今は認めなければならないようです。
その安全な部屋に閉じこもってたじい様を犯人は連れ出して殺してる。絶対安全とは言い切れねえけどな。
バトラ君の説のおじい様がうまくレシートをやり過ごして自分の意思で部屋を出たと考えるなら、籠城の価値はあるかもしれない。
楽観的すぎだぜ、兄貴。
However, at the same time, I thought he brought up a pretty interesting point. After all, this gives us a chance to question the enemy, the witch herself, about how the sealed door had been opened. If we assume that the culprit used some technique to abduct grandfather from his study, they would have to show us the same trick again if they wanted to assault us in the study. It's an opportunity to force the culprit to demonstrate that trick right before our eyes. If they're a real witch, we would be forcing them to say "Open sesame" and open the door by magic right in front of us. But such a thing is probably impossible. If you flip over the chessboard... Oh my god, I'm gonna get I'm gonna get so bored of this phrase, but okay. You realize that the culprit is obviously just trying to act like they're a witch. If they really were a witch, all they'd have to do is appear in front of us and show off a spell colorful enough to silence all our doubts. Since they've avoided doing that, everything must be the work of a fake witch who wants us to think otherwise. Therefore, a culprit who used a technique other than magic to defeat the locked room couldn't open the door before our eyes.
じいさんの部屋ってのは8人で押しかけても大丈夫なくらいの広さなんすか？
はい。ベッドにソファー、毛布類もありますので、贅沢を言わなければ十分に夜を越すことができます。流しにご不浄、冷蔵庫に酒棚もあります。
ひゅー。
Yeah, liquor is exactly what you need right now.
そいつはすげえぜ。しかしおかしなもんだな。自分の家の中にさらに自分の家を作ったってのか？島を丸ごと買って自分の夢を全て実現しきったじい様の最後の家にしちゃ随分手狭なんだな。
そうですね。いつの頃からかお父様にとっては屋敷内ですら心を許せる場所ではなくなってしまったのでしょう。
そこに引きこもっていたのを私たちは嘲笑い、そして今度は私たちがそこに立てこもろうってわけだ。
Jessica spat the words out.
ジェシカちゃんは 立てこもるより犯人を探しに行きたいという感じだね。
もちろんこっちから探しに行って見つけられるなんて思っちゃいないぜ。結局は待つしかない。ならどこで待ったって同じだろ。逃げも隠れもしない。客までテレビでも見ながらのんびり現れるのを待とうじゃねえかよ、ベアトリーチェ様をよ。
現れなければ現れないで十分です。犯人を暴くのは私たちである必要がないからです。
正論ですな。警察が来るまで危険を冒すべきではありません。
ありがとう南條先生。私はお父様の書斎に移るべきだと思います。確かにお父様が連れ出された可能性があり、絶対の安全が保証されているわけではない。しかしバトラ君の推理のお父様が何らかの方法で自ら書斎を出て外で襲われた可能性も否定できません。
That crazy theory had just been what I came up with to stop the argument. However, just as Auntie Eva had said, even though that trick would work, I can't begin to explain what motive could have made grandfather do something so awkward to sneak out of his own study. Plus, the trick of hiding under the bed and waiting for the receipt to be removed before escaping couldn't have been used unless grandfather had known that the receipt was wedged in the door. Auntie Eva hadn't pointed out that last part, but it's clear how absurd the theory was. Then, does that mean that as Auntie Eva claimed, the door was sealed and it was a locked room? It is a doubtless fact that Aunt Natsuhi was the culprit and that the room was a locked room. If Auntie were here now, she would probably make that claim openly and do me the favor of blowing my strange theory away. I mean, if he had noticed the receipt, he also could have placed it back in at the same spot, because Eva made the argument that how could someone else, replace it precisely where she put it. And also, human memory can fail. If we take Eva at her word that she did it the way she did. Anyway. But anyway, yeah. I had to admit that the room with both a bed and a toilet that all 8 people could be shut up in, and with only 2 keys, both of which were gathered here, had to be the safest place in the mansion right now. If he had found it after it fell out of the hinge, yes. But I meant not that, just meant that he had noticed that the receipt was placed there. As Battler had said, so Battler said that the only way his theory would work out, that Kinzo hid himself until the two, Natsuhi and Eva, came back to the room and gathered the receipt and whatever, and then left. But that's a bit too convoluted, given the hypothesis that he noticed the receipt. If he had actually noticed the receipt, he could have replaced it where it was. That's all I'm saying. So I don't know. Not saying that's exactly what happened, just that it opens up this possibility. So he didn't actually have to do something as convoluted as hide and then leave. At the very least, I figured this would be better than shutting ourselves up in the parlor again and saying nothing went wrong while we were in there before. No, wait. Were we safe only because we were shut up in the parlor? What if leaving that room and moving to an unexplored location is actually more dangerous? Yeah. No good, no goddamn good at all. My flimsy head is about to break out in a fever. As I keep flipping over the chessboard, the real and the inverse keep switching with each other over and over, and I lose my ability to believe anything. Yeah, it's pretty much how we feel here, or like I feel here. You guys in chat know already what will come later on, so... When it seems like the culprit is one of the 18, I want to believe in Beatrice. And once I start believing in Beatrice, I start wanting to find the culprit that made the 18. That keeps spinning around forever, and in the end my thoughts haven't taken one step from where they started. How far back in the past was it that Kirie-san taught me this chessboard way of thinking? That concept of examining the situation by flipping it over and thinking from the enemy's side. I get a feeling that I was so interested in this way of thinking at the time that I let it guide the way I thought about everything. By the way, Kiria-san was Dad's co-worker back then. I hadn't dreamed that the day would come when she would be added to our family. Didn't Kiria-san tell me something? Okay. I get a feeling she once said that while this chessboard thinking was one way to look at things, it wasn't all-powerful by any means, and in fact was actually bad to rely on too much. Well, there you go.
チェス盤思考ってのはね、昔本で読んだゲーム理論というものを私なりに解釈したものよ。とても面白い学問だから、バトラ君も大学に入ったら挑戦してみるといいわよ。
ぜひやってみたいっす。それを勉強してチェス盤思考をもっと鍛えたら、どんな相手の手の内も読めるみたいで楽しいじゃないですか。
でもね、盲信しちゃダメよ。ゲーム理論は非常に奥深く複雑な学問なの。チェス盤思考はその上辺だけを私なりに解釈した考え方に過ぎない。バトラ君が想像するほどに相手の手の内を読み切るには相当の勉強が必要よ。しかもチェス盤理論は応用の利く便利なものではあっても完璧ではない。便利ではあっても弱点が多い。
弱点？
ええ。チェス盤思考の基礎はゲーム理論。ゲーム理論は突き詰めると数学に行き着くの。
Yep.
数学の弱点は何か知ってる？ノイズよ。
In math, when you write 1 plus 1 equals 2, that equation will always be 1 plus 1 equals 2, no matter how many billions of years pass. Nothing more, nothing less. That's because there's absolutely no noise mixed in. But for example, unlike math, the Japanese language has noise mixed in. Kanji are a good example. All kanji and new kanji are slightly different, which represents an introduction of noise created by change over the ages. Isn't history the same? There are dozens of policies that seem foolish in the modern era but were meaningful at some point in the past. Because the rules of chess are fixed, when a pair of experts are discussing one particular position, it's possible that they could reach the same conclusion whether they're from 100 years in the past or 100 years in the future. However, if the rules of chess had gone through massive changes over time, it's possible that the discussion about that same position would have changed as well.
その通り。人の世の事象は本来ノイズだらけなのよ。人の感情だってそうでしょ？全く同じことが起こったからといって、人は必ず決められた反応を示すとは限らない。それを数学の理論で当てはめ、相手の行動を読もうとする時点で、すでに理論には弱点と限界があることを知らなければならない。手っ取り早く言うと、チェス盤思考はノイズや気まぐれ、そして誤解、認識ミスに非常に弱いの。
That's right. Kiria-san definitely said that. In the first place, chess is a game where both sides play by the same rules and fight with the same objectives, namely victory. This is why it is possible for both sides to predict the other's moves. It's possible to read an opponent because you can always suppose that they will advance with the best moves they can find. But what if the opponent is fickle or a little tired and makes a move that can hardly be called the best? Or maybe, what if the game actually has special rules, only the enemy knows them, and they can make use of something unknown to you? In fact, what if the opponent actually has some goal other than victory? Think from your enemy's perspective. That is the basis of chessboard thinking, which means that if you understand your enemy, any and all answers that you draw from that process will be complete rubbish and of no use at all. Many times I'd thought that by using chessboard thinking I had gotten a glimpse into the person behind these crimes. However, I don't know anything about the culprit. Am I just playing in a labyrinth of thought? See? If Kiria-san were here at a time like this, she'd probably be able to notice something with her much sharper thinking ability. Yeah. Alright. So, then that scene concluded. I think it's a good place to leave it for tonight. We're at the 2-hour-and-a-half mark, so yeah. There we are. And we will pick it up next time. We'll see what happens. If they make it through the night. Oh, you want to join the Discord? Yes. Give me a second. I will give you an invite. go. Here I am. All right. And let's see, Discord. Invite people. There we are. Spinning the chessboard around over and over. I mean, Battler did that to himself. I'm just here to witness it, you know. Yeah. Yeah, thank you guys as well for tonight and for always being a cool presence in my chat. I'm still a little bit overwhelmed by everything that's happening, but yeah. Ugh, I guess I'll have enough time to think it over the weekend until we pick it back up on Tuesday. Big Nezu, yes, yes, here I am. Oh. I have a lot of emotions to process before I go to bed. This has been quite something. You'll have it all solved by next stream? No. No way. First of all, I have already been told that I should just, you know, enjoy the ride and not try to focus too much on actually solving it, because you would need quite a lot of knowledge that there's no way that I could possibly have to figure stuff out. And at the same time, I don't particularly have an interest in finding an answer, like to make it be like, oh, this has to be the answer. I just want to see stuff, you know, unfold by themselves organically and just enjoy the ride. Yeah, I'm trying to speak out my mind a little bit here and there, because I noticed that there's a certain interest from you guys in chat to just kind of get a piece of my brain of what's happening in the moment, but at the same time I don't, even if it were that kind of story that gave you all of the ingredients and all you had to do is put them together, I don't think that I would have the affinity to do it. It's not my forte. It's not something that I would feel that I could be good at, so I'm not attempting it. I'm just, you know, like I said, trying to enjoy the ride, and that's fine by me. I don't have anything to prove necessarily in that regard. Yeah. Hey, there you are. There you are. Our Discord is tiny but chill, and there's a daily influx of Umineko and Little Buster's fan art that Bea is delighting our senses with. So you can look forward to that. Treat the story as you wish. Yes. Okay. Thank you for the reassurance. I can only be myself, you know. So it is what it is. Oh, all right. Almost a quarter to midnight for me. I'm gonna go relax a little bit and then chill. Have a work day tomorrow. The day I was off, it was very nice to be off. It was a public holiday for Children's Day. Happy Children's Day to everyone who still feels a child inside, by the way. Always nice to be connected with your inner kid. Don't let them disappear into the dust of time and adulting. And yeah, I will let you leave you here. I need to process stuff, like I said. I hope you have a nice weekend. Take care of yourselves. You know, see you, hear you in the Discord. Read you in the Discord is probably the better way to say. And we will pick this back up next Tuesday, same time. See you then. Illusions of the past disappear in the sea of butterflies. Wow. Very, very poetic. And Umineko, like Children's Day. Ooh, yes. All right, guys. Take care of yourselves. Have a good night and see you next time. Bye bye.